Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going from something, the mitral valve, which is quite rare, to Norwood procedure, which is relatively common. And the title of my talk in this debate was "The Standard Norwood is Better for Most Forms of HLHS." Well, I stopped it there because it's just better. So the title is Standard Norwood is Better. What am I talking about? So the standard Norwood is atrial septectomy, a damus between the small, minute ascending aorta and the pulmonary valve, and aortic arch augmentation and provision of pulmonary blood flow. It is an incredibly adaptable procedure, right? So when people hear about this, they said, "Oh, okay, the only choice is RV to PA conduit or BT shunt." That's just the beginning. For instance, if I have a child who comes in and is oversaturated and whose ductus is gigantic, I'm going to change my pulmonary blood flow. I'm going to usually slightly upsize the shunt. I'm going to come off the ascending aorta as opposed to the innominate artery. I'll change my technique slightly if the ascending aorta is small. It is a very adaptable and an operation that is easily taught. For instance, in our institution, as Dr. Wong will attest to, standard Norwood for a straight-up HLHS is a teaching case. So why was the hybrid stage 1 developed? Number one, there was a hypothesis that you could reduce morbidity and mortality by moving the most demanding operation to early infancy, thus eliminating cardiopulmonary bypass and circulatory arrest during the vulnerable neonatal time period. And it was really introduced by several smaller institutions as a potential way to improve their outcomes. I'm going to argue that this is not true. I'm going to make 6 points. My arguments are going to be based on actual data and not published reports. I'm going to base a lot of the data on the STS Congenital Heart Surgery database. So this is a freely accessible database that almost every major institution in the United States contributes towards. There are over 475,000 heart surgery procedures that are currently in the database. It is updated twice a year. Just about every institution in the United States contributes to it, and the data cannot be fudged. It is what it is. And I'm going to use the STS Congenital Heart Surgery database to demonstrate these 6 points. I'm also going to talk about the congenital heart surgery public reporting. So one big push recently in the United States was to identify a method to compare different institutions. And so, again, there's no hiding what the data is. When you publish a report, that data is not vetted. You can actually write whatever you want. But in the congenital heart surgery public reporting, they base it on the STS database. It's freely available. Not many people know about it, but you can get the data, and it will tell you how different institutions do. And to emphasize each one of these 6 points, I'm going to use a short video. Okay, so if at the end of the points, the data supports the hybrid approach, I'm going to play this video. Oh, sorry, the Norwood approach, I'm going to play this video. Okay, here's the video. Boom. Okay, the Norwood, if it supports Norwood. If the data at the end of the point supports the hybrid approach, I'm going to play this video. Okay, ready? Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to use this after each one. Okay. Here's the outline of the 6 points. Despite the availability of the hybrid approach for over 20 years, it is remarkably unpopular in the US. Okay? Remember, the people who decide whether or not to use the Norwood are your colleagues, pediatric cardiologists and cardiac surgeons. They understand the data, they understand the problem. Despite over 20 years of follow-up, most people still use the Norwood. Number two, the reports that bilateral PA banding is a low-risk operation and that combined hybrid stage 1 and stage 2 mortality is less than 10%, this is simply not true. Okay? Number three, the claim that inferior outcomes by the hybrid approach in these data are due to selection bias, and that the use of the hybrid in smaller and sicker neonates is the reason behind these inferior outcomes. This statement is simply not true. Okay? 4, the claims of a 4% mortality for the comprehensive stage 2 by the most famous and aggressive hybrid center in the US, the center that is advocating very strongly worldwide about the hybrid, this is simply not true. Okay? 5, there is no publication that suggests that the hybrid procedure improves neurodevelopmental outcomes in these children. Not even one. And finally, I will show that the hybrid approach increases the number of unplanned reinterventions and jeopardizes the long-term complication-free survival in their patients. Okay? So let's go over these 6 points. Number 1, despite the availability of the hybrid approach for over 20 years, it remains incredibly unpopular in the US. Okay, so here is the data that you get for the STS database. And these are the most popular, or the most frequent, the most frequent neonatal procedures over the last 4 years. Remember, this is updated. Every major center contributes data. It is updated twice a year, and this is the last 4 years. Okay? I'll make it bigger. So the number of Norwood procedures done over the last 4 years in the United States, 2,587. The number of hybrid approaches where you have bilateral PA bands with a stent in the ductus is 288. And the number of hybrid stage 1s where they apply just bilateral PA banding first, for instance, the delayed approach, also 200. So basically 80% in the US are done with standard surgical Norwoods, 10% PA band plus stent, and 10% bilateral PA bands. Overwhelmingly in the US, in real-time data, not anywhere else, most pediatric cardiologists and surgeons use the standard surgical Norwood stage 1. Okay, so okay, here we go. Boom, okay, point number 1. Okay. Number 2, the reports that bilateral PA banding is a low-risk operation and that combined hybrid stage 1 and stage 2 mortality is less than 10%. This is the claim. This is not true. Okay, let's look at the data. Okay, here's the mortality data the last 4 years for neonates. Okay, I'll blow it up again. Ready? Here we go. Norwood procedure, mortality across the United States, 14%. Hybrid approach plus a ductal stent, 17.7%. Hybrid approach, bilateral PA bands, almost 34%. Okay, this is not data that is put together in some publication. This is what it is in the United States over the last 4 years, updated twice a year. Okay, we're now in infants. What about stage 2? Mortality for a bidirectional Glenn, 1.8%. Comprehensive stage 2 is 8.4%. Okay, now I'm going to do some math. Here we go. Surgical Norwood plus Glenn, 14.1 plus 1.8 is 15.9%. Okay? Hybrid bilateral PA bands, ductal stent, and comprehensive stage 2, 17.7 plus 8.4 is 26.1%. Okay? Hybrid stage 1 plus comprehensive stage 2, or and including the hybrid Norwood with delayed surgical stage 1 and bidirectional Glenn, 42.2%. Now I'm going to do some math here. Ready? Here we go. 15.9% is less than 26.1%, and 15.9% is less than 42.2%. Okay, the hybrid approach in real time over the last 4 years across the United States, updated twice a year, increases early and total mortality. Here we go. Okay, here we go. Next. The claim that inferior outcomes by the hybrid approach are due to selection bias and the use of the hybrid and sicker and smaller neonates is simply not true. So let's discuss what this STS database is. Do you know what it is? It's risk adjusted. So that means that if your patients are higher risk than normal, your mortality score that you're given is lowered. So these are the things that they take into account, things that the proponents of the hybrid approach claim that the data suggests that they're sicker. So it takes into account age, weight, genetics, mechanical circulatory support, shock, mechanical ventilation, renal failure. We are talking about a highly compensated and risk-adjusted model. So the mortality statistics used by the STS takes into account all known major risk factors for death and injury. So these comparisons are performed on a level playing field, and the arguments that the data is skewed because the mortality in hybrids is due to the fact that they are sicker and smaller patients is not true. Okay, that's another one. Okay, here we go. Number 4, the claims of a 4% mortality for the comprehensive stage 2 by the most famous and aggressive hybrid center in the US is simply not true. I won't name that institution, okay? Stat 5 category for this overwhelmingly is the comprehensive stage 2. This is their claim of a 4% mortality. This is their real mortality over the last 4 years, updated twice a year. 17.6%, okay? Just for fair comparison, this is ours. Our adjusted mortality over that time is 10%. 17, 10. Does Nationwide do sicker patients than we do? Remember, their comprehensive stage 2 is done when their child is over 1 month of age, usually closer to 6. Ours are done as neonates. Actually, their expected mortality when it's risk adjusted is 12%. Our expected mortality is 18.6%. Our mortality, our children are actually much sicker than Nationwide is. In fact, they're 21% higher than expected mortality, and we're well under expected mortality. Okay, so I've gone even more in depth into investigating what the real data is for this aggressive center. And it's very difficult to find any data. But when I found this paper, You would think that this paper done in Pediatric Cardiology, a very important journal in our community, very recent, 2015, and it's about neurodevelopment and hybrid stage 1. This is all about the nationwide experience. You would think that both Dr. Galanowitz and Dr. Cheatham would be on this paper. They're not on this paper. But this is Sharon Cheatham. She's a nurse PhD. This is Dr. Cheatham's wife. Why are they not on this paper? Number one is, as I'll show you later, it shows no difference in the neurodevelopmental outcome from their own data. But number two is, if you look closely at the paper, it says this: 50% of HLHS patients suffered a cardiac arrest requiring resuscitative measures. What? This is a 4% mortality institution. Here we go, I'll read it one more time. 50% of HLHS patients suffered a cardiac arrest requiring resuscitative measures. The most famous and aggressive hybrid center in the US has a very high comprehensive stage 2 mortality. In fact, it is higher than the mortality for the neonatal Norwood operation averaged across all centers in the US. Okay, we're gonna keep going. Point number 5. There is no publication that suggests that the hybrid procedure improves neurodevelopmental outcomes in these children. Not even one. Okay, the closest paper that I found looks at 2 points. 1 year, there's no difference in PDI and MDI between hybrid and Norwood, and there's no difference at 4 years. 2 time points. I thought I'd show you a different video of Steph Curry being attacked twice, and each time he evades this particular thing. One at 1 year, one at 4 years. Here we go. Here's Steph. Oh, trying once, trying 4 years. Nope. Okay, done. Okay. And finally, point 6. The hybrid approach increases the number of unplanned reinterventions and jeopardizes long-term complication-free survival in their patients. Okay? You can find any number of patients, and the major thing that happens is the Nakata index for the pulmonary arteries is worse. The intervention rate is higher. The LPA stenting rate is higher. The bilateral patching rate is higher. Okay, for single ventricle patients, is pulmonary artery development important? Is that an important statement? Well, I think that long-term survival and the development of things like protein-losing enteropathy and liver fibrosis, they depend heavily on the growth of the branch pulmonary arteries and the maintenance of a compliant pulmonary vascular bed. The hybrid approach may decrease long-term survival. So despite this, again, the standard surgical Norwood is going to block any claim that they have. Here's another video of blocking. I got this for Dr. Wong. Ready? Here we go. Oh, no, it does not. Oh! Okay. All right. Finally, I will conclude. The hybrid approach to HLHS. It has a higher stage 1 death rate. It has a higher stage 2 death rate. It has a higher death rate even in the very best and most experienced center in the US. There is no selection bias. There is no impact on neurodevelopment, and it increases the need for unplanned reintervention and jeopardizes pulmonary vascular development. Which one will you choose for your patients? The hybrid approach or a surgical Norwood? Thank you.